All right, good morning, young scholars. Today, this video is going to be discussing how to evaluate functions, okay? Also known as evaluating functions, all right? In 8th grade, you are very familiar with functions. You have seen functions that have a x and a y variable. X represents your input, and you plug in your input to figure out what your output is, okay? But today we're going to learn, instead of the y variable, you are going to see something called function notation. We read this f of x, okay? So what I'm going to show you is how we can figure out what our output is once we plug in a value into our input. So for example, you might see a problem that says evaluate f of 3, okay? All this means is you substitute 3 into your x variable, or this 3 represents your input. So I would write this down as 3, and I put my input in parentheses plus 5. So if you notice, I wrote everything the same, but I plugged in my input into the x variable. And to evaluate this, I'm going to plug in what you see on the right side of the equation into my calculator. 3 parentheses, I put my input in there, plus 5, and I click enter, boom. So this tells me that for the input of 3, the output is 14, okay? So I'll say this again, you must always put your input in parentheses, okay? So we're gonna jump to two other problems that you'll see when it comes to evaluating functions, okay? So if I want to figure out what is my output for the input of -4, I substitute -4 in for x, every x in my function. So here I have 2 x's. So for each x, I substitute my input, which is -4. And what'd you see? I put it in my input in parentheses. And then in my calculator, I'm going to put everything on the right side of my equation. You see I use parentheses again. Square, subtract, parentheses, -4. Okay? Oh, and I forgot something. I forgot my 3. So there you go. We all make mistakes. And then I click enter, and boom. So this tells me for the input of -4, my output is 28. Okay? All right, one last one. We're going to do this really quick. I'm going to figure out what is my output for the input of 6, and I substitute 6 in for my x. Okay? All right. And in my parentheses, I put the right side of my equation. I divide by 3, and then add 4, and boom. So this tells me for the input of 6, my output is 6 as well. Okay? All right.